The left hook strikes again. That thing is deadly. Everyone knows it's his calling card. Everyone's seen the devastation that he's wrought with it. But guys are still out there getting caught with it. The latest victim, Oscar Duarte. Duarte stepped in behind his right hand. He just leans in a little bit too far. Ryan pulls back from the shot. And he's able to just land this beautiful check left hook. Garcia followed up from there, scored the knockdown and the stoppage. Game over. That's all she wrote. But let's back up a little bit here. Now, going into this one, there were a few different storylines coming into this fight. It starts out, and we're all talking about how is Ryan Garcia going to bounce back from the loss? He just went out there in his last fight, suffered his first professional loss, got stopped by Tank. How is he going to bounce back from that? Then all of a sudden, the story turns into the beef between Ryan Garcia and Golden Boy. He's at the press conference and he's going back and forth and he's talking slick about Bernard. He's talking slick about Oscar. He's talking about how people, his promoters aren't backing him. They want his opponent to win. There's a lot of things being said. And then quickly, all of a sudden the story changes to the weight. We're no longer fighting at 140 pounds. We're fighting at 143. And all of a sudden people are starting to question his state of mind. Oscar's putting out tweets. He's putting out interviews. People are beginning to think, is there an upset brewing? Is this man not disciplined? Why are we having this fight at 143 pounds and how is it going to look? But at the end of the day, all of that's window dressing. All of that is really just setting the stage for what matters most, and that's the fight. And it was an interesting one tonight. It was an interesting one. Ryan Garcia, at the end of the day, he comes out, he gets an 8th round knockout. And look, that's great. But the two takeaways that I have from this fight, number one, Ryan Garcia is never going to be a best in the division fighter. Okay, I don't care if he fights at 140, 147, whatever the case may be. He's never going to be the guy that we look at and say, he is the best in his division. And number two, and this kind of goes along with that, it's because he's never going to listen to his trainer. I mean, think about it now. Eddie Reynoso, Joe Goosen, now we're talking about Derrick James. These men were, well, Derrick James didn't say it, but we saw it again. These men that before us, they were absolutely correct. You don't train Ryan. You don't train Ryan Garcia. You collaborate with him. Okay, and that takes us to the fight. Break this down a little bit. We look at it now. When this starts off, to be honest, I thought we got what we expected to see. Through the first couple rounds, we see Ryan Garcia circling around a lot on the outside. He's throwing some jabs, some left hooks here and there. Everything's hard. It's fast. He's showcasing the speed and the power. But one shot that you didn't maybe necessarily expect, one shot that we consistently saw showing up was the uppercut. You could tell that he had been working on it as an answer to the pressure that Duarte was going to bring. Probably landed about 6 or 7 of them just in the first 2 rounds, man. Duarte was applying a lot of pressure. Wasn't really effective. Anytime he got too close, Ryan Garcia was wrapping him up. It was a good first 2 rounds. But then all of a sudden we saw a change, right? Starting late in the 3rd, maybe the 4th round, really, we saw Ryan start to use what I'll call a shoulder roll defense. And I'm being a little bit generous when I say that, but that's the closest thing that it resembled. But when Duarte would come in, you'd see Ryan get completely defensive. He's putting his hands up. He's almost turning his back to the action. I mean, he's not looking for any openings, no chance of a counterpunch here. It was a really odd stance. Definitely not one that you typically see from a high-level professional fighter. And I had just never seen someone take that posture before. You know, it caused Duarte to end up hitting him in the back a few times. It was an odd look. Then all of a sudden they go and they ask Derrick James about it in the middle of the fight. And I thought his answer was interesting. And it goes back to what I said about Ryan Garcia not being trained. He said, Derrick James said, I'm a boxer, so I want him to box. But, you know, he's getting comfortable in there. He's starting to see a little bit of success with it. That's what matters. And that answer was just another indication of what we've heard before, how Ryan Garcia does what he wants to do. He fights how he wants to fight. That's what he goes in there and does. Now, that posture that he's taking, that shoulder roll, he's kind of turning his back a little bit almost. It didn't take Duarte long to figure out that when Garcia was pulling that move, that the answer is to double up the left hook. He does that, and all of a sudden he started landing some solid shots out there. From there, Duarte is able to build some momentum in these middle rounds. Starting late in the 4th, he won the 5th and the 6th on Chris Mannix's card. He started putting some good work. Okay, he's starting to win some rounds. He's starting to build some momentum as the fight's progressing. And then in the 7th round, we saw Ryan Garcia switch it up again. And he gets on his bike, man. He's using a lot of movement along the ropes, a lot of lateral footwork, just kind of picking and popping his shots in here and there. And that was what Duarte couldn't deal with. It was hard for him to get his shots off because he's the type of fighter that needs to set his feet to get going. And ultimately, that's what led to the knockout. In the 8th round, we see Duarte chasing. Again, Ryan Garcia is on his bike. He's chasing after him. He tried to hit him with his right hand. He reaches a little bit. Ryan pulls back, causes him to miss, and just catches him with a beautiful check left hook. After that, it's game over. Garcia finishes up, lands a flurry, and that's it. It's out of there. He doesn't beat the count. The fight is stopped. Now, all in all, 8th round stoppage. It's a successful outing. But I'm not sure that I can watch this fight and still think that the sky's the limit for Ryan Garcia. Am I being too harsh? Let me know what you guys think.